So there you go, pressure at the bottom of the table. You just heard from some of the managers there. Let's have a look at how it looks at the moment on the bottom half of the Premier League. And you can see Bournemouth are on 38, Burnley are on 36, Newcastle 7 points clear of the bottom three on 35, Brighton and Southampton both on 33 points, and they are 5 points clear of Cardiff with 28. So it's incredibly tight down there. It's a pivotal weekend as well. Let's have a little look at the fixtures, because this affects the table massively, or very much could do. So we start off with Leicester versus Newcastle, and that is our Friday night football game. Of course, you can see that on Sky Sports. And it's followed by Burnley versus Cardiff, potentially a six-pointer there. Brighton are taking on Bournemouth, and Southampton are taking on Wolves. So you can see it's just popped up in front of your screen now. When we look at these guys, I mean, there's some important fixtures there. The one that screams to me, actually, is Burnley and Cardiff. What do we think of that one?
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity for Cardiff that they have to take. My only fear for Cardiff there is that, you know, the style and how Burnley play, they're very accustomed to that direct football and how they want to play, and I think they may actually even be better at it than what they are. And I think that's a tough fixture for them to have to win at this stage of the season.
But they have to.
They do.
You know, and I think knowing that that's what they have to do, sometimes that makes it easier. I don't think it will be pretty, to say the least, as I think it will be a fight for both sides. But Burnley have proved, I think, with adversity in a really, really tough season, after such a slow start, they're a team that have found their way in a difficult period, and I think it will be a home win at the weekend.
What about Southampton against Wolves? Because the introduction of Ralph Hasenhüttl seems to have changed Southampton's outlook and stabilised them somewhat. A difficult game, though, against Wolves, who are potentially chasing seventh.
Wolves in brilliant form. They're great to watch. They're playing with, you know, total freedom, and they look like they're really enjoying their football. And I have to say that Southampton are too, given the position they're in. I think that's the biggest thing that Hasenhüttl's brought to Southampton. I think he's got a group of players that are on board with what he wants to do. He's got them a bit fitter. They're playing with a higher intensity, and I think, you know, the psychology that he's brought to the club, I've really liked, because he's almost... Well, he invited the players on a journey, the first press conference that he signed at the club. And he made no disguise about what it was going to be. And I think he's got the best out of the group that he had, and he's got rid of players, you know, their transfer window, to move on players that weren't going to be on board, or what he felt weren't going to be on board with his plans.
They're fighting.
Exactly.
Because they looked massively, excuse me, in trouble.
Yes.
At some point. But he's been able to instil that mentality that we've seen Klopp do, you know, in a very similar fashion. He's got the fans behind the way of playing, and I think there's an aggression to them at St Mary's that makes him difficult to beat.
Right, because he's had some setbacks as well, because I think they lost to Cardiff at home. I think it was Cardiff in the last minute they lost to at home, and it was like a real hammer blow, because everything had been going well. So, you know, they've had to bounce back a couple of times, but, you know, he's got them in a good place, and, you know, I think they can beat Wolves at home.
OK, so we have been asking for you to get involved as well, and you can tweet us at Sky Sports PL, and you have done. And here's a couple that we want to read out. This one's from LLX, and he says, if Manchester City win the quadruple, would it be a bigger achievement than Leicester winning the league?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's I don't know what the odds are for a team to win a quadruple, and I'm sure they probably aren't as steep, or I don't know how great they are compared to Leicester winning the Premier League, but the fact they have to do it with sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3 days recovery for a really, really long period would be a significant achievement.
Do you agree?
Yes, definitely bigger. Definitely bigger. To achieve that in the Premier League, I think, is the key. You know, you see...
Even with the squad and the investment that they've had, just playing devil's advocate?
It doesn't make any difference, because you're competing against other teams that have great squads and great resources.
And sometimes that makes it harder, because keeping a team is an easy option, staying with the same side. Changing and rotating players disrupts some degree of rhythm. So to keep winning and compete for a quadruple, I think it's an outstanding achievement if that happens. OK, let's take this one then. This is from Dan Roberts, and he says, how close are the likes of Wolves, Watford, Leicester, etc. Into breaking into the top six next season, and do you think any of them will?
I think it's very, very hard for those clubs. I think, you know, this best of the rest, seventh in the Premier League table, you know, it could start to be a real feature. It'd be a shame if it did, because I like to see other teams challenging and being in that top 4 spots, maybe even. But for them to establish themselves as top 6 clubs, with the ones we have.
There's 2 parts to that. If one of them qualify for European competition, then they add something else to that. The second part is second seasons. You know, once teams, you know, understand personnel a little bit better and you figure teams out, you play against them a little bit differently. So how are they going to adapt to that? That, you know, what's worked from this year won't necessarily work from next year.
You also look at Burnley as well, and you can see,
it's a good example.
You know, everything in the Europa League and then a really tough Premier League season because of it.
Yep.